pure oversight on my part and my fault, my mistake. And I apologize for that.
A stunning admission in the governor's race today. The Republican nominee talks of missteps over a $46,000 mortgage loan for a top prosecutor at the U.S. Attorney's Office he once headed. The Republican candidate Chris Christie, who's championed himself a corruption buster and model for ethical behavior, issues a dramatic apology today. Christie admits he made a mistake when he loaned First Assistant U.S. Attorney Michelle Brown the money 2 years ago and never reported it on his income taxes or his financial disclosure forms while serving as U.S. Attorney. Now, State House correspondent Zachary Fink is here with us now on the latest on the story, Zach, that you broke last night. Zach.
Thank you, Jim. It was a contrite Chris Christie who made a statement to reporters and then answered questions today. He says the matter was an oversight, but questions still remain about his actions and certainly any potential political fallout. One day after Christie spoke to NJN News exclusively about the terms of his loan to Michelle Brown, the Republican candidate apologized for mistakes stemming from that financial transaction.
When I make mistakes, I'm going to admit them. And I made a mistake by not putting on my disclosure form the loan that Mary Pat and I made to Michelle Brown and to her husband Mike about 2 years ago.
At issue is a property here in Mendham owned by Brown, who was then working for Christie in the U.S. Attorney's Office. In October 2007, Christie took out a $46,000 second mortgage for Brown and her husband, who used the cash to pay off credit card debt. The contract, drawn up by a lawyer, stipulated that Brown and her husband would pay Christie and his wife, Mary Pat, 5.5% monthly interest as part of their monthly payments. The amount rounded out to $499 per month over a 10-year period. Christie says there's no reason that it wasn't an even $500 payment other than that is how it was amortized under the terms of the mortgage. But since Christie was a federal employee at the time, he was required to disclose that interest income on financial disclosure forms. He failed to do so twice. He also failed to report it on a state ELEC report last spring and did not disclose it in his 2007 tax return.
I thought of it as a loan. And so, yeah, there was interest being paid, but I didn't think about it that way. I knew the payment was $500 a month, and they were paying back the money. So I didn't think about it as an investment that was giving me income.
Christie says he will be amending his disclosure forms, his tax return, and his ELEC report to reflect the income, which amounted to just a few $100s in 2007 and roughly $2,400 for 2008. He held a news conference after an event where he spoke to a room full of seniors at an apartment complex in Cherry Hill. Reporters peppered Christie with questions about the circumstances surrounding the loan. They then followed Christie out into the parking lot where his vehicle was waiting. He eventually pulled away, saying he needed to be somewhere else.
But I think the very fact of having to explain it creates some difficulties for him since, as we discussed, his reputation was so strongly based on making sure that that people in public office behave in exactly the ways we expect them to behave in terms of disclosure and living up to ethics codes.
Christie claims that failing to disclose the income on his taxes is different than willfully doing so, a criterion he has used to prosecute certain cases. For example, in 2005, as U.S. Attorney, Christie said, quote, "We have prosecuted every variation of tax fraud and method of evasion. Tax cheats and tax fraud artists are playing a risky game that hardly seems worth the gamble when we and the IRS investigators catch them." And a year later, he said, quote, "Tax evaders and cheats come from all levels of income and social status, and we will prosecute them fully when IRS criminal investigators bring them to our attention. Our goal is to protect the integrity of the tax system and level the playing field for all citizens who file timely and honest returns." Earlier this month, Christie outlined a broad package of ethics reforms that he says he will enact as governor that included a specific proposal about financial disclosure forms.
We need to require a new, more detailed annual disclosure form of all public officials. Now, if you've looked at the New Jersey financial disclosure form for public officials, it is a joke. And if you look at the one that I had to fill out as a federal official, it'll give you a headache. I'd rather give public officials a headache and have more transparency for the public who needs to know what their financial interests are than to continue to use an ill-advised, narrow form that does not give you the information you need to judge whether or not a public official is acting in his or her own interest or in the public interest.
Christie also revealed today that he promoted Brown twice at the U.S. Attorney's Office, once in 2003 when he made her his counsel, that was before the loan, and then once again in 2008 after the loan. We asked if acting U.S. Attorney Ralph Mara knew about the arrangement.
Yeah, I told Ralph about it. Everybody in the front office knew about it at the time. I mean, we talked about it. We talked about it. We talked about it. So, yeah, and as Ralph said yesterday, I read somewhere that, you know, he was aware of it. And I had spoken to Ralph about it at the time and just told him, you know, because we all knew that her husband had lost his job.
We reached out to the U.S. Attorney's Office, but a spokesman said neither Mara nor Michelle Brown would have any comment. He added that there's no law preventing an employee from lending money to a subordinate. In a separate development, Mara is facing an internal ethics investigation over remarks he made about the corruption arrests last month, which included public officials. At issue is whether Mara made comments designed to help the candidacy of Chris Christie in the governor's race against Governor Corzine. A couple of other points here. Christie said today that a 5.5% interest rate on a loan seemed like a fair and agreeable rate, although a quick search reveals that mortgage rates were on average 6.3% for a 30-year mortgage in October of 2007 when the loan was made. So it does appear to be below market. We asked why, as rates have come down, Brown didn't refinance and pay Christie back in full. Christie says, Jim, that he just hadn't thought about that.
All right, Zach, thank you.